Hi everybody and welcome back. Today I have another index card video with Distress Inks. Because I enjoyed that process so much and I did so many index cards during the last week, I decided to record another one. I already bought some white index cards. Last time I had the green ones, and because I had so much fun, I wanted to have some white ones, and I have ordered different textures, grid texture, lines, and dot grid. And here I'm using the one lipstick, Distress Ink, and the scattered straw Distress Ink. I haven't cleaned my mat very well, and there was some blue on the mat. Maybe it was the gelato. I used this for a nice technique that I will share with you today. Or it was that Neocolor crayon. I can't remember, but blue is in my color palette today, so I don't mind. I just move the paint around a little, and I really like the texture I got here. So I will add the ink to some of the other cards, and then I will clean my mat so I don't have any surprises on my next layers. I cleaned my craft mat and I have dried the backgrounds, and now I'm going to add another layer to bring in more depth. It's important to dry the inks in between because then they will layer up on each other and not blend into each other, and with the layering you get much more depth and that makes it more interesting. I also like to work on such a craft bed because when you're working on a glass plate, you won't get these speckled textures that you get here with the inks. When you're working on a glass plate, the ink will run together to one big blob and not separate like it does on the mat here. And these dots that you can get are really lovely, I think. I dried the cards with my heat tool, and now I plan to come in with the Distress Crayons to add some kind of a different texture. Of course, if you don't have the Distress Crayons, you can just keep on working with Distress Inks, or you can try it with the Neocolors. It works not as good as with the Distress Crayons. Mine is running out and there is a piece of plastic in here, and I like to use the Distress crayons for sketching, and I can't use this one anymore in the sketchbook because of the plastic. It just scratches into the surface, and that does it also on my craft mat, so I'm using that the knife here just to get that leftover crayon from the pen or from the plastic holder, and I can use everything of it. They are not cheap. They are similar to the Faber-Castell gelatos, which I think are no longer produced. And what I don't like is that you have a lot of plastic that you now have to throw away. I'm just moving that crayon on my craft mat like I would usually do it with the crayon itself, not with my fingers. I'm just smearing the bits that I have onto the craft mat. And then I'm going to add loads of water. You need quite a bit of water to get the crayon pigments running on your background. And that gives you some really nice textures. It's just different compared to the Distress inks. But of course, if you don't have the crayons, just go with the I think it's the peeled paint with the peeled paint ink here. Or it also might be the crushed olive. Unfortunately, I cannot remember which green I've used. My screen is very small, so I could not read that. And as I said, you can try it with the new colors, but it's not the same as with the Distress Crayons. I'm not sure if you can see how the texture is looking. You need some water so everything is running on your card and not smearing, if that makes sense. What's also really lovely, I tried this technique with the Black Soot Distress Crayon, and that gives you a really nice and grungy texture. When I have a thicker piece of the crayon on the card, I just wipe over it with my fingers and blend it a little bit into the background. To not waste the crayon and also the inks, I always have 1 or 2 cards that I use just for the leftovers. Sometimes they turn out nice, sometimes not. I wanted to try the same technique that I've used in my last video with the Distress Glaze over this background. And I'm using just a little bit of the Distress Glaze and I work it into that blending tool, and then I use a stencil to apply the glaze to the cards. As it's an invisible product, you cannot really see where you've already put it. Well, you can see it a little bit, but it's not so easy. So it's always a little bit of a surprise how the end result looks. I try to go on top of areas that I really like. So these are protected against my next layer of ink I'm going to apply. Unfortunately, the green crayon on my cards goes onto the blending tool, so it becomes a bit green. So I think I have to clean it once in a while when I use this technique over the crayons. If you're using that only over the Distress inks, you won't get much ink on your sponge. And here you can see the green blending tool. I think this might clean with water and a little bit of soap. As this is waterproof, you might need anything like soap or maybe some dish cleaner. I now go on top of this background with the with the blueprint sketch color. I really love that bright blue, and it works so well together with the colors that I've already used. And you can see that the glaze gives you a resist, and the pattern of the stencil will show up on the background of the cards. If you don't have the Distress Glaze, you can also use clear embossing powder. I mentioned this in my last video as well. It also will create a resist and give you a similar texture. And here's that cleaning index card where I just put up the over amount of ink I have on my surface. I'm using the crushed olive in Distress Oxide, and give the cards another layer. The oxides work great on the distress inks because they are a bit opaque compared to distress inks because of their pigment part in them, and they will show up on top of darker colors. You have to be careful with them because they dry a bit matte and milky, and you won't cover, or if you cover everything of your card, they might look dull and boring. So just add a little bit here and there. And again, I'm picking up the leftover paints or inks with the leftover ink card. I wanted to add some background stamping to the cards, and the easiest way to use a big stamp but only stamp some smaller areas is with by laying down the stamp to your working surface and then pushing down the cards. So I just laid down that old book page from the Mix It Up number 5, and I pressed down the cards just in some smaller areas so I get some hints of the texture. I've used StayZone for stamping, and it gets quite sticky and takes off a little bit of that oxide ink, which then sticks to the stamp. I don't mind that, it's just something that I've recognized here. I add even more stamping with a circle postage stamp image. To the background, I'm using, I think it's the peel paint in Distress Ink, or maybe the forest moss. Just something that is similar to the colors on the background. And I just go on those areas where I think something is a bit missing or boring. Now it's time to think of some focal images, and I have this collage for the folder here. I shared this as a full tutorial over on my Instagram exclusive page, but there's also a quick process clip with a write-up tutorial over on the Rubber Dance shop blog. I will link that up in the video description. I decided to go with the collage leaves. I have only 2 of them, so I have to stamp some more to use them here. But first I want to show you how I color these in. I'm going to do it the easy way. I think I did this also in my last video. I will just smoosh down some ink. This is the one lipstick. My favorite color recently, by the way. It's such a gorgeous red. I've never recognized that. And instead of the yellow, I'm using a green, and I think I'm using the Distress Ink and Peeled Paint. And I will just dip in, it might also be the crushed olive. I'm really sorry, I cannot remember which ink I've used here. And I'm just dipping in the leaf, and that gives me the most gorgeous highlights and color splotches on that focal image. I stamped more leaves and colored them in the same way, and while these are drying, I am going to add some white splatters with that Viaco Art Craft Halo Shape crayon. You can use also white acrylic ink. It's just that I have this laying next to me on my desk, and it's a super easy way to make some white marks on a project. I just use some water with it, and you can use it like watercolor, but it's the most opaque white I have ever seen. As the Distress inks are water soluble, they will definitely bleed into the white a little bit, but I don't mind that. I'm going to use some collage pieces to adhere the flowers or the leaves on top of them so they are not alone on the card. And I'm just tearing some pieces out here and I arrange them on the cards. This is a jelly print, quite a neutral one, and I stamped it in dark blue ink with a stamp from our Mix It Up #6 stamp set. It looks like handwriting, and with the blue ink it almost looks like real pen. I'm also going to prepare some tabs that I want to adhere on top to the index cards, and therefore I have one of these leftover ink cards, and I will stamp them just with two different kind of ticket stamps, and then I will die cut some shapes out of it, and we'll put these on top of the index cards as kind of a little tab that just adds some more interest to them. I will now use this and cut some elements with some dies. Of course, you can just cut out some tabs with a scissors if you don't have a die cutting machine. And here I'm back. I have cut some elements from this paper, and now I'm going to arrange everything to my cards. For this collage paper, I try to use to put it on top of areas that are a bit more boring. So I like to not cover up the most beautiful areas. I always try to cover up the ones I don't like as much. And then I will just adhere everything with a glue stick and the leaves with some wet craft glue. I will speed up this part a little bit because otherwise it's quite boring, I think. I cut two tabs from that paper and two tickets, and I tear the tickets into half, and I'm going to adhere these pieces to the top of the cards. I thought it would be nice if the tabs looked like if they were stitched on, so I'm using a stitching border. This one is the one from our Mix It Up 5 stamp set, and I just stamp it over the tabs, so it looks a little bit as if they were stitched on, and I'm doing the same to the collage pieces I've already glued down. I'm now going to adhere the leaves. I will use some wet glue for that, and I will do this off camera and then show you the photos here of the finished pieces. I hope you enjoyed this video too, and I hope you will leave me a comment, and we will see us next time. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.